welcome everybody. Welcome everybody to the Lighthouse. We are very pleased and honored and blessed to have with us tonight Rabbi Nasan Maimon, who is back again with us. This is now the maybe fourth or fifth time you are now a regular at the Lighthouse Project, and we're so happy to have you here with us. Rabbi Maimon, for those that don't know, he is the Rosh Hashiva of Breslev Yerushalayim, and he is also an instrumental part in bringing out Rabbi Nachman's teachings in the English world. He has a website called BreslevTorah.com, which is a fantastic website where you can catch all of Likutei Moharan and Likutei Halachot, which is Rabbi Nasan's work. All his classes are in English, and it's easy to understand, and it's doing wonders for all of Am Yisrael, including myself. And I thank you very much again for coming out. And I hope you guys enjoy. Just quickly on tonight's learning, we're dedicating tonight's classes, and actually for the rest of the month, it's dedicated in memory of Shua Polanski, Zichrono Livracha, 31-year-old father of two, left back also his wife up in Crown Heights. Unfortunately had an untimely passing, and a tough story to swallow. And I felt that the least that we can do is dedicate all the Torah that's going on right now, and it's going to keep going for the next couple of weeks in honor of his name, that his neshama should have an aliyah and can keep going higher and higher with everything that we're doing here. Also, tonight's learning is sponsored by Joseph Gutman in honor of the Refuah Shlema of Menachem Mendel ben Sarah Batya and Devorah Fega Bat Reizel. Thank you very much. Enjoy.
Started off by saying that generally when people hear the term fear, anxiety today, it's something that a person would want to run away from and not have any part of it, because fear can actually kill a person. There's an expression, to die from fright, or at least shorten a person's life. And we would wonder why, when it comes to religion, the Torah mentions that this is an integral part of a person's relationship with Hashem. We know there's a lot of discussion about love for Hashem, v'ahavta es Hashem Elokecha, to love Hashem, to love the Torah, but there's also an element, a very important element that comes first, which is Yirat Hashem, fear of Hashem, which is defined in two directions basically. The first is referred to as Yiras HaOnesh, which means fear from punishment. Just like people that learn how to drive in a city know that there's a red light and a green light, and sometimes if a person goes through a red light, sometimes they get away with it, nobody's watching, and sometimes they don't. And sometimes it can cause terrible, terrible physical damage or death to the person who goes through the red light or the stop sign. Or sometimes it's just a minimal $250 fine, or a person loses their license because they broke a rule, because they caused a violation. So in religion also, in our relationship with Hashem, there's this element of Yiras HaOnesh, and then there's something called Yiras HaRomemus, which is a fear, a respect that comes from being wowed, from being in awe, a level of recognition of something that's so big and so great that it's imposing. It imposes a respect upon the person. The person has major respect because they see this is so big, so great. And both of these are critical preliminary elements in Judaism. So how do we put this together? How do we put together the fact that fear and anxiety causes suffering, shortens a person's life, or can actually kill a person? And we know that when it comes to religion, the Torah says, V'chai bohem, v'lo sheyomus bohem, that Hashem gave us the Torah for us to live by. We know that anytime there's a conflict between the Torah and a human life, the Torah takes second place. Even if it's a question, even if it's a maybe, if there's a maybe element, if somebody chas v'shon might be critically ill, or might have a question of pikuach nefesh, We know that we break Shabbos, we break Yom Kippur, we put all the laws of the Torah aside for it. So that being the case, Hashem wants us to live. How does this coincide with this element of fear? And the answer that's given, and Rabbi Nachman speaks about this in a number of places, is that there's good and bad in almost everything. And here also, in fear, there's a good fear, there's a healthy fear, and there's a deadly fear. The deadly fear is when the fear is misplaced, when a person is afraid of things that a person really shouldn't be afraid of, when a person is anxious about things that they really shouldn't be anxious about. And the healthy fear is when it's something that serves a very positive purpose. Now we know when Hashem first officially declared his relationship with the Jewish people, this was in the year 2448, after the Jews came out of Egypt, and they were a nation. For the first time, they were actually a nation, and they headed towards Mount Sinai. And there we were told that Hashem had chosen us over all of the nations in the world. He gave all the other nations a chance. He offered the Torah to them. Each one of them rejected it for different reasons, where it seemed to them that the Torah wasn't their thing. One was into murder, one was into adultery, other things, and they felt that the rules of the Torah wouldn't be something they would enjoy living by. And when it came to the Jewish people, we're told that the response that they gave to Hashem when Hashem offered us the Torah was Naaseh v'nishma. Where do we sign? First we'll sign, and then you'll tell us more about what it's about. There was such a level of trust and respect for Hashem, and in addition, no fear. No fear. Generally, you give a person a document, especially a contract, a 400-500 page contract. Person's not going to sign that without first looking it over, or not even looking it over, passing it on to a professional, a lawyer, an accountant, whoever it is, that's going to really, really examine that before I commit. And yet here, there was a level of spectacular trust and faith in Hashem that if Hashem is offering it to us, there's nothing to fear, nothing to fear but fear itself. And sure enough, signing, committing immediately. And yet, we're told that when this took place, when this act of Matan Torah took place, there was fire and brimstone. The whole mountain was fire. There was the blasting sound of the shofar, very loud noise, imposing tremendous fear on the people. And in fact, when the Torah summarizes this in the 5th book, in Chumash Devarim, it says there, Ki yoreso mipnei ha'esh. You were afraid of the fire, the great fire and awe and the crashing sounds that you saw when Hashem gave the Torah. Generally, when you put fire to something, paper, wood, a house, anything, the fire destroys it, eats it away. Just like fear, we said, fear kills, shortens the life of something. And yet, the next holiday coming up, in about a month, we're going to be celebrating the holiday of Hanukkah. We see something extraordinary. We're told that the Jews had a major war with the Greeks, and they were successful in the war, and they drove them out, and then they went into the Beis HaMikdash, the Holy Temple, and they wanted to reactivate everything, start it up again. And one of the important parts in the Holy Temple, the menorah, the candelabra, which requires oil that has to be pure, no impurities in it, no spiritual impurities, no physical impurities, and they were searching for pure oil, and the only thing they found was a small vial of oil, which was either a one-day supply, or according to some, less than 1 day's supply of oil. And the amount of time that it would take them to be able to get a new shipment of oil was more than 8 days. So they're going to take this small little bit of oil, and it might last them a day or less than a day, and then what? They showed faith, they lit the oil, they put a match to it, they set fire to it, and not only didn't the fire shorten the life of the oil, usually the fire will eat up the oil. In this case, the fire increased the life of the oil. This little bit of oil was able to continue for 8 days. Continued burning for 8 days. This is one of the miracles that we celebrate in the holiday of Hanukkah. And this, Rabbi Nachman says, teaches us an incredibly important lesson. That there is a fire, there is a fear that not only doesn't it shorten life, but it increases a person's life. It adds to a person's life. In fact, there's a pasuk that says, Yiras Hashem tosif yomim. Fear of Hashem adds days. What do we mean by adds days? Does it mean that if the person was supposed to live 70 years, now they're going to live 90 years or 1,000 years? It means that if a person has this kosher, healthy respect and fear for Hashem, that person will be able to achieve a lot in a day, to be able to accomplish a lot. The person will be driven and motivated. Sometimes if a person doesn't know that there's any price to pay, if they don't complete a project, a person has a project, they made a commitment to do something, if there's no clause in there that says penalty, every day that this comes in late, you lose ABC. You lose 10% of the price of the project. Or there's a bonus if it's completed early. A person sees that kind of item, that drives the person to be able to get 3-4 days work sometimes done in a day. They're motivated to do it. This Yiras Hashem, this respect and fear, when it's put in the right place, directed towards Hashem, directed towards those whom Hashem wants us to show respect to. Hashem says that parents that bring a child in the world, the parents deserve to be respected by the children. And that type of respect is something that's healthy. That type of respect is one of the important ingredients that's going to motivate the child sometimes to do something. A child comes home a little bit tired from school, there's homework. I'm tired. Parent says, I'd like you to complete this, or I'd like you to complete this so that I can serve you supper. You finish this, I'll be happy to provide you a good meal. Sometimes that's a motivation that's needed, that even though you are tired, you really are tired, and it could be an excuse to say, I can't do this. But with the right kind of motivation, the can't suddenly becomes can, and sometimes not just can, but the person jumps to do it quickly. This is this Yiras Hashem, which the Torah defines that there are appropriate places to apply it. One is to Hashem, one is to parents, one is to a Talmud Chacham, one is to a respectable place. A person comes into a synagogue, into a shul, into a sanctuary. A person is supposed to dress the part. There are people that aren't aware. Sometimes people will come in shorts, sneakers, or a jumpsuit because they want to be comfortable. But a person knows that if they were going to the White House to meet the president, or if they were going to some very respectable person on an important occasion, it's easy to understand that it commands respect. The same thing is in terms of a holiday. If Hashem declares this day as being different from other days, there are 6 days in the week in which a person can accomplish many things. Hashem tells us there's one day, the 7th day, which is holier and more important in certain ways than all the other 6 combined. One of the rabbis tells us that on Shabbos, if a person studies Torah for 1 hour, it can accomplish the same thing spiritually as 1,000 hours during the 6 days of the week. Even though we don't necessarily see this, a person who isn't tuned into this, people who don't keep Shabbos, or people who haven't really learned what Shabbos is all about, when Shabbos starts, sometimes you ask the person, do you feel any different? And the person says, no, I really don't feel any difference at all right now than I felt on Thursday night or Sunday night. And yet we know that a person who does allow themselves the privilege to learn about Shabbos and to practice Shabbos, it's worlds of difference. I had the privilege just a few hours ago, I had lunch with a close friend, a woman who for a major part of her life did not keep Shabbat. And she said when she first heard about it, she was afraid of it. She thought, again, it's so imposing, it seems so stifling, so difficult, can't turn on lights. Some of the simplest, most basic things that we're used to. And suddenly, not allowed to do this, not allowed, can't do this, can't do that. She was very worried and afraid of it. And she said, I look back now, I can't imagine how I lived without it. The ethereal joy, the elevation that I feel, there's no comparison at all between the thrill of setting the table, just preparing the table, preparing the foods, the special foods for Shabbos. A person would say it's such a chore, it's such an effort, it's bliss. For a person who believes in it and who knows what it is, it's a thrill, it's my pleasure, my greatest pleasure. The hours, the Thursday night, the late hour, and the preparation, and all of this. This is the concept of Yiras Hashem Tosef Yomim. It's a respect, it's a fear, which is a tremendous benefit to the person. And one of the reasons why we're suffering so much in today's generation, especially with youth, that are misguided and going through all kinds of terrible struggles and everything, is because this ingredient was left out of their upbringing. There were people who thought they were smarter than Hashem, smarter than Judaism, smarter than the Torah. They thought that this isn't necessary at all. Why introduce this into a relationship between parents and children? It seems so much nicer to be on a first name basis, that a child calls their father Joe or Harry. And we're friends, we're close friends. What could be better than that? And wouldn't that certainly be enough to motivate the child to want to do what I'd like them to? And the proof is in the pie. We see that that's not the case at all. We see that the true wisdom is the wisdom of Hashem, it's the wisdom of the Torah. If a person studies this, they experience life, they enjoy it to the fullest, and they're able to really, really succeed in many areas. We know that the Torah tells us another very important point, that in the beginning, when Hashem created the world, He created many of everything. Many trees, many animals, reptiles, stones. Man, Hashem created one human being. It started with one human being, which was completely different from everything else. And the Torah tells us this was to teach us that a person, a human being, is a world. You help a human being, you save a human being's life, you saved a world. Chas v'sholom, if you destroy one life or destroy a human being, it's having destroyed a complete world. Because again, the world in the beginning had one person in it. And we're told that Hashem gave one instruction to man at the time. Hashem said there are many trees in the garden here, all of them are available to you. There's one tree that I don't want you to partake from its fruit. And we're told the story evolves. There was Adam and Chava, a man and a woman, and they ended up eating from this tree. They ended up going against the command of Hashem. And Hashem had warned them that on the day that you eat from this tree, you're going to die. Ki v'yom acholchem mimenu mos Thomas. Why didn't they die on that day when they did? We're told that a day, Hashem's day, ki elef shonim b'einecha ki yom esmo, that 1,000 years to Hashem is like a day. And in fact, both of them, both Adam and Chava, passed away within that first 1,000 years. And there's a calculation, a specific calculation, as to how many years they did live and at what point their life was cut off. That was one result. there's another result which maybe is even worse, in that Hashem said that as a result of going against my wishes, be'itzavon tochalena, they brought a new thing into the world called depression. Atzvus, depression. Sadness, depression, lack of happiness. Be'itzavon tochalena, be'etzev tel dibonim, that bringing children into the world, giving birth, will come with etzev, with depression, with struggle. And then be'itzavon tochalena, earning a livelihood, will come through atzvus, depression. King David summarizes this in 2 words. He says, Edag mechatosi, I worry because of my sins. The Torah tells us again that the Torah is called a book of life. Eitz Chaim, it's a book of life, it's a tree of life. The more a person studies it, the more a person fulfills it, the more alive they can be, the more happy they can be. Pikudei Hashem Yeshorim Mesamchei Leiv. We're told that the commandments of Hashem are righteous. Hashem really knows what he's talking about. We gave this example before about respect, and there are so many other examples of things that the advice that the Torah gives, which people that follow the advice are usually impressed to see that sometimes, whether we thought it's going to work or we didn't, we see that, wow, it really works. Here again, the example of Shabbat. People who don't know what it is to keep Shabbat. I have a close friend that owned a store selling very expensive furnishings and precious stones in the Waldorf Astoria in Manhattan in New York. And the contract that they signed with the hotel required that the store is open for 7 days. And at the time he opened the store, he wasn't religious, he wasn't Shomer Shabbat. It was a great deal. Felt good about it and everything. And he was doing business there for years. And there were times that some of the workers there did keep Shabbat, and they left for Shabbat. And the owner of the business continued. He'd come in for Shabbos. He would drive in from New Jersey to Manhattan to make sure the store was open, with a thought that could be even Shabbat is the best day for business in certain retail businesses. And there were people along the way that tried to tell him that, why do you need this for? Why don't you take the day off Shabbat? He couldn't hear it. At one point, a number of years ago, a rabbi suggested him, try one. No commitment at all. Try one Shabbat, not going in, and see what happens. He heard it. He didn't commit on the spot. This was in Israel at the time. He went back home to the United States, came home, and I was in touch with him, and I was curious to see, is he going to do it or not? And sure enough, he ended up keeping that first Shabbat. He stayed home. I asked him, how was it afterwards? He said it was very nice to sit down with the family, to have a Shabbat meal, and not to have to run out, not to have to go. Very enjoyable. I didn't ask him what he's going to do the following week. Sure enough, he ended up doing it again the following week, and that was the beginning of a whole change in his life, a complete change. And once again, a year or two later, without being asked, he said to me, Rabbi, I can't imagine why I didn't realize this before. How could I not have known, And yet we see that again, it's not something that a person could figure out on their own necessarily. And even when a person first hears about it, the first reaction seems to be, by many people, not for me, or why? Why would I impose this slavery? Life has enough rules and regulations, and why would I want to take on more restrictions, more limitations, more boundaries? But the person discovers that this restriction, this boundary, is life itself. The Torah says, To'ameho chayim zochu. Those who taste what Shabbos is, they're experiencing life in a new way. Just like the example we gave, person figures, wouldn't it be so much easier if we didn't have these lights at intersections? have to stop and no lights. Imagine if they shut the lights off for a day, the street lights for one day, just not in the whole world, just in Miami, just for one day. Could you imagine the chaos and everything? And yet you speak to people who are not so intelligent. Tell a kid, you think it would be a good idea to give people some freedom, not to feel inhibited and restricted, red lights, stop signs, things like this. We're mature enough, most of us, to understand that, again, that's death. That's sure death, and the restrictions are life, literally a key to living a proper kind of life. The Mishnah says in Pirkei Avos, Kol haporek mimenu ol Torah, a person who throws away, who disregards the responsibility of the Torah, nosnin olav ol malchus vol derech eretz. Hashem imposes on that person a different yoke. He has the yoke of the struggle to earn a livelihood and the struggle of running into problems with government, ol malchus. And here again, the Torah tells us, Adam la'amal yulad. Man was created to struggle. There has to be some struggle in life. Ashrei mi she'amolo b'Torah. Fortunate, lucky is the person who makes the right choice to choose the struggle in educating oneself, and educating oneself in the best education, the Torah itself, versus passing on that and going through a completely different struggle. On a simple level, again, a person brings a child into the world, and the child starts growing up, and they first toys, candies, sweets, everything. And then at a certain point, the child is told, time to go to school. Go to school. What did I do? I didn't do anything. I didn't do nothing wrong. Why am I being sent to school? Why am I being sent to prison? School's a problem. I have to go, and I have to be there on time, and I have to be there for so many hours. And in school, I can't do this and can't do the whole. And a person who has a little more intelligence looks at the child and says, you have no idea. You have no idea what a gift I'm giving you now. You have no idea what the difference is between a person who has the right education and can get through life so much easier and so much better, versus a person who misses out on that education and can't get any decent job, can't get any... It's a completely different world. And yet again, to a person who's not so intelligent, not so clear, it seems like the exact opposite. It seems that this is the most severe punishment, that if parents really don't like a kid, they'll make them go to school, or they'll have them go to school, and more court, all of this, when in fact this is a genuine display of love. We find, the Torah tells us in one place, Eis asher ye'ahav Hashem yochiach. One whom Hashem loves, Hashem reprimands. Meaning that when a person is doing something wrong, when a person is doing something that'll harm them, that'll harm others, there are certain cases where someone else will see that and they'll ignore it. They'll just look away. Why? Because I don't really care about that person. I don't have any connection with that person. I don't feel I owe it to that person anyway to correct them, to point out what they're doing wrong, or I know that person isn't interested in hearing it. There are certain people that aren't interested in anybody telling them what to do or telling them what's right or wrong. But the Torah, Hashem, with His infinite wisdom, tells us that if somebody really loves someone, then when they see that person stumbling, or they see that person going in a direction which is going to lead to mistakes, which is going to lead to harming the person, they're going to point it out to the person, even if sometimes it's going to hurt a little bit. We know human nature is such that most people don't enjoy hearing that what they're doing is wrong. And yet, the Torah says that's an example of love. That's not hate, it's love. That respect, that fear, that yira that you're imposing, That's Tosif Yomim. That's going to add life to the person. That's going to allow that person to live a much better life than they could if they didn't have this information. Now there's another very important element called tzaddik. Tzaddik means a righteous person. Tzaddik means a person who has developed a very close relationship with Hashem. Tzaddik also means, sometimes is used to mean a leader, a qualified leader of the Jewish people. We know that when we think of Moshe Rabbeinu, one of the definitions of Moshe Rabbeinu is tzaddik, the leading tzaddik of all time, possibly. And when Moshe Rabbeinu, who lived for 120 years, Hashem tells him, it's time for you to pass away. And Moshe Rabbeinu being the one who really, the true leader of the Jewish people, who cared, who really cared, he says, Hashem, I can't leave without knowing that there's a qualified replacement for me. Now, imagine, you talk about to being a chairman of the board of a company, or a CEO, or a rabbi of a synagogue, or a mayor of a city, to prepare a list of qualifications. What a person needs to be qualified to be in charge of a whole city or a whole company. Usually there's a pretty long list of qualifications. Here Moshe Rabbeinu is speaking to Hashem, and he's defining exactly what he's looking for in a person to take over his job, to be the leader of the entire Jewish nation. What are we talking about in the Jewish nation? The Gemara makes a statement that's a little bit on the funny side. The Gemara says that you want to know why Hashem gave the Torah to the Jewish people? Because there's no other nation that needs it more than us. There's no other nation with more troublemakers and characters and chutzpah. That's the wording in the Gemara, that needs discipline, that requires discipline more than us. So now Moshe Rabbeinu has a lot of experience in dealing with us. And now he says to Hashem, I need somebody to replace me. And he mentions one requirement only. That the person who's going to take over my job has to be Ish Asher Ruach Bo. Those are the words in Hebrew. Ish Asher Ruach Bo. The Gemara says what that means it's someone who can relate to every different person. A person who recognizes that human beings are not cookies or cookie cutter. And especially when we talk about the Jewish nation, there are no two people that look alike. There are no two people that think alike. Each and every single one is different, and therefore each and every single one has to be treated differently, has to be understood and recognized. Two people come to a rabbi to ask a question. Rabbi, is this permissible? To the first person, the rabbi says, definitely not. Another person comes in 15 minutes later and asks the same exact question. Rabbi, is this permissible? Not only is it permissible, but it's a mitzvah. It's very important. We're talking about authentic Judaism. We're talking about real Judaism. The rabbi who's really qualified will understand that for a certain person, I'll give an example. In my youth, I was privileged. My rabbi introduced his students in the 1960s. He said that one of the best careers for an observant Jew is computers, the field of computers. It's something that you can take with you anywhere in the world. It's something that's always going to be around, and it's just going to expand, going to grow and everything. And many of his students, including myself, got involved in that field, got trained in the field, got a job, got involved in banking and in brokerage firms, other things. And at one point, the rabbi gave a class where he was speaking about charity, the mitzvah of tzedakah. And he said that Hashem, the Torah teaches us, that Hashem says, we're partners. I created the world, I created you, everything you have comes from me, and you would expect at least a 50-50 relationship. Hashem would not do better than saying 50-50. And Hashem says, no, 90-10. You keep 90 on every dollar. 90 cents is yours on condition that 10 cents is mine. And the Gemara says, and if you don't like that, Hashem says, we'll reverse it. If you don't want to, if that deal isn't good enough, then the next year you'll find that instead of earning 100 grand, you'll earn 10 grand, and it'll mean that Hashem kept the 90 for himself, chas v'shalom. This is what the Torah tells us, that the minimum requirement for charity for a Jew who's going out to earn money or receives a gift is 10%. There's a max also. The Torah tells us that the maximum under normal circumstances is 20%. Why? Because we're not looking to make more poor people. We're not looking to have more people on welfare. We're looking to have less people. If a person's going to give away his entire income or 50%, then he's going to become a poor person. We're going to have to worry about him also. So the Gemara says that the maximum under normal circumstances is 20%, period. And there are many blessings that are written about a person who gives 20% of their income to charity. In fact, one rabbi once said that when we recite the Shema and we say there, V'yohavto es Hashem Elokecha, you will love Hashem b'chol levavcha, with your entire heart, u'b'chol nafshecha, and with your soul, u'b'chol ma'odecha, and with all your wealth. How does a person fulfill those words, u'v'chol ma'odecha, to love Hashem with all their wealth? If a person gives 20%, they get credit for this v'chol ma'odecha. The rabbi mentioned this, and the next time that I got a paycheck, I would usually give my meiser to the rabbi because I knew that he was best qualified to know how to use it, who to give it to, who needed it most, what's the best causes. So I told him I'd like to start right now giving 20% based on what I heard in the shir. He said no. His answer was no. That right now, you shouldn't be doing that. You don't have a house yet. You're just starting out in life right now. At this minute, you're excited about it. You want to do it. But if, chas v'shalom, you'll get into any kind of financial struggle or difficulty, you might resent it or this or that. First, get a little more established. You'll get more established. We'll renegotiate. We'll see if you're ready for it or not. An example of a person being able to know when yes, when not. There was an incident that a student started coming to his class who was not religious at all, not keeping Shabbos, not keeping kosher, and started attending Torah classes. A short while later, that person's father passed away, and this young man knew nothing about the laws of burial, the laws of Shiva. So he asked the rabbi, what am I supposed to do? The rabbi told him how to be able to contact the people who could prepare a kosher Jewish burial ceremony. And he said, after your father's buried, there's a 7-day period that you stay home. You sit, it's called sitting Shiva. Shiva means 7 days. For 7 days you stay home. You don't wear leather shoes. He told him the basic laws that are involved in it. He asked him, what about Saturdays? It's the same thing. Saturdays, same thing. There was somebody that heard this, that heard the rabbi had said this, and said, wow, my 6-year-old daughter knows better than that rabbi. Every child knows that on Saturday, on Shabbos, you don't sit Shiva. No such thing. And they went to one of the chief rabbis at that time in the United States, Rabbi Moshe Feinstein, who was recognized as a world-renowned authority on halacha. And they asked him, is there any opinion in Hebrew law that a person sits Shiva on Shabbos? He thought for a moment and said, no, not at all. They said, because there's a rabbi in New York who told the student to sit for 7 days, including Shabbos. So he asked, who's the rabbi? And they told him his name is Rabbi Leo Rosenfeld. He smiled and he said, if he said it, you better go check. Because as well as I know the law, he knows it just as well, not one iota less. They went back and they inquired, and they found out that the rabbi had thought a little bit further. These people didn't think of it. The rabbi knew that if he tells this student not to sit home, he's going to get in the car and go to work. And rather than have him do that on this first week after his father passed away, the rabbi gave this young man his first Shabbat. That was the first Shabbat he ever kept in his life as a gift to his father who passed away. Now here again, you read the books, you look in the book, you don't see it. It doesn't say that. But there's an additional intelligence. And this is what Moshe Rabbeinu understood so well from his experience. That in order to live by the Torah, we said v'chai bohem, a person has to live by the Torah. There's a lot of reading that has to be done, and there's a lot of common sense, and there's a lot of heart. There's a lot of heart. And it's only if a person has all of those qualifications that they'll know how to use this the right way, in a constructive way. The first item we mentioned earlier was yira, a respect that comes from a recognition of reward and punishment, and a respect that also comes from coming to a realization as to how great Hashem really is, how big He really is. And we're taught that with that foundation, with that beginning, it will lead a person naturally to a love for Hashem, a love for the Torah, a love for Shabbat, a love for parents, all of these things. In Hebrew, every single word in the Hebrew language, in Lashon Kodesh, is something divine. It's something that comes from Hashem Himself. And the words and the letters have tremendous secrets in them. The Hebrew word for fear and respect is yira. The Hebrew word for love is ahava. There's an overlap between the two. The second half of the word yira, yud resh aleph hey, is the first half of the word ahava, aleph hey beis hey. If a relationship starts with respect, then it can lead to love, to a healthy kosher love. There's an expression, falling in love. People fell in love. Falling in love very often means where there isn't any, they just fell into it. There was no introduction. There was no respect that came first. There was no foundation of mutual respect. If that foundation is there, people can fall in love and they can fall out. A person wakes up one morning and that love isn't there, isn't on, and suddenly that the relationship can just fall apart because it was a building that was put up without a foundation. The foundation is this yira, this respect, this yira of kedusha, this holy, this proper yira. When that foundation is there, then the love, the things, the other elements that come afterwards are healthy, are conducive, and it'll replace all other anxieties and fears and phobias that people suffer from. This is the statement we mentioned earlier, where Hashem says, if you will accept upon yourself the responsibilities that the Torah requires, such as fear of Hashem, respect for Hashem, you will not have to be afraid of all the fears and phobias and anxieties that other people suffer from. Where am I going to get my money from? I lost my job. What do I do now? What do I do now? As long as Hashem is in business, there are people who think that as long as the Federal Reserve is around, my money is protected. But we know even in recent history, World War II, people found out that when it says on the coin, "In God we trust," that ain't the God. The dollar or the yen that's not the God, because those things go up and down. And there were very powerful nations that had very powerful economies that suddenly one day went nowhere. People went rushing to the banks to get their money and there was nothing to get, etc., etc. Whereas, if I put my faith and trust in Hashem, and I'm able to develop, I'm able to study the Torah and to learn why does Hashem want this respect? What is it all about? How does it help mankind? How does it help the world? And a person accepts that. He accepts then that'll save them from all the wrong kinds of fears, which are called yirois nefulos, fallen fears, where the fear goes into all kinds of other things, finances, health, social problems, all the different fears and phobias that people suffer from. Shem should help us. Be zocher. There's an easy way, there's a shortcut, and there's a long cut. Sometimes, again, there are people who think they're going to take a shortcut, they're going to cut corners. No, they're going to go through a stop sign, they're in a rush, and it's only a stop sign they go through, and they end up in a hospital. If they're lucky sometimes, the person ends up in a hospital for 6 months because they were going to save 3 minutes or 30 seconds. They thought that there's a short path that takes much, much longer, and there's what seems like a long, difficult path, the religion, the Torah, which is really the ultimate shortcut. It saves a person. People, if you interact with people today, a person who has faith, a person who believes, that person, when good things are going on in their life, they can enjoy it. When they're going through struggles, they have what to hold on to. Their faith gives them the ability to get through it, to get through a crisis, to get through a difficulty, a struggle. Whereas people who don't have that faith, the slightest thing that doesn't go their way, finished. There's no consolation, there's nothing to hold on to, there's nothing to look forward to. A person who believes in Hashem, knows that there's more to life than just the body. There's a soul, there's eternity. Hashem did not create this incredibly complex world just so that people would eat and sleep and work and die. And then the next generation will come and eat and sleep and work and die. Can't be, impossible. It wouldn't make any sense. There's got to be something much more to it. And if a person will allow themselves the luxury to open the book, to open the Torah, to look inside and read a little more and get educated, they'll come to realize that there's a very positive there's an eternity to look forward to if a person does what they can on their level to live a proper, healthy life. Should be zocher by the guidance of the Torah to enjoy a happy, healthy life with blessings, with good children, with all the good things we wish on ourselves and others, and merit to see the coming of Mashiach, the building of the Beis Hamikdash, b'mehera v'yameinu, amen v'yameinu. Any questions? Please.
Worried about a certain financial situation, maybe a flood or not going away on so, naturally you start with fear, you have obligations, blah, blah, blah. And at the same time, thinking, I should fear Hashem, of course. And in actuality, I am actually fearing Hashem, that he's punishing me for something that, I'm not aware of, or I am aware of someone, but,
Very good point, very important point. Rabbi Nachman, in his book, has about 400 lectures. And they're in a certain order, and the first lecture, the first one that's listed in the book is not necessarily the first one that he gave in his life or anything like that. It was chosen to be number one because of a very important message that it has there. That sometimes our Yetzer Hara, our evil inclination, will cloak himself in mitzvahs. He's trying to bring a person down. The Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination, is trying to bring a person down, to paralyze the person, to prevent the person from doing mitzvah, good deeds and everything. But he knows if he would approach a person and say, come with me, how about coming with me, let's do some sins together, the person would say, what, are you crazy? Not interested. So what he does is he tries to present his version of a mitzvah. You know why this happened? You know why this is happening to you? Probably you're being punished for things that you did wrong. That attitude is not kosher in authentic Judaism. Hashem, there is a concept of reward and punishment. We don't know when and what. I had one of the most incredible cases I ever had in my life. A young couple once came to a class that I was giving over 30 years ago. I was a kid at the time. I was in my 20s. And they came over to me after the class and said, Rabbi, can we speak to you about something important? And I saw that they were very serious. And I said, sure, come to my house. They came to my house, and they're both sitting down, and they're both almost in tears. They said that they got married young, 20, 21, and they thought that they wanted to wait as far as having children. They wanted to enjoy a little bit each other, etc. So they made a decision to hold off on having children for the first few years of marriage. And then, about a year ago, they decided, or a year and a half ago, they decided that now they're ready, they want to have children, and nothing's happening. And they went to a rabbi, and they spoke to him, and the rabbi said, sure, of course, you're being punished. You think that you tell Hashem, I don't want this, and when you decide you want to get some. And I saw the tears, I saw the deep, deep pain in them. And I said, that's disgusting. Which Jew has the authority to tell somebody else that they're being punished, or that we know why they're being punished, chas v'shalom? I said, just for that, I want to call my rabbi. This was about 10 o'clock in the evening in New York. In Israel, it was 5 a.m., and I know my rabbi is up early in the morning to go pray. I call him on the phone, and I tell him this story. I tell him, now usually, if I would ask him to pray for somebody in a serious way, he would usually say, what's the relationship with you? You can pray, if a person wants to pray for people, today you can get lists online of 6 million people that would like to have you praying for them. And you can't, it's impossible, and it's not the right way. A person praying is supposed to be a serious thing. We know that when Moshe Rabbeinu prayed for something, he prayed for 40 days, and then another 40 days. And it says he prayed so hard till he got sick, Vayechal Moshe. Praying is not, Hashem, please help this person, have a nice day. That's not serious. Praying means really putting your heart into it, and tears and everything. So very often, if I would call my rabbi and ask him to pray for somebody, he wanted to know, who is this? What's your relationship with this person? Are they serious? Are they supportive of what you're doing? That this time, when I told him what this rabbi said, he said, give me their names. Give me both of their names. I'm going to start today praying every single day for them to have children. Sure enough, a short while later, she became pregnant. They had about 8 children, B'li Ayin Hara. Two of their children were valedictorian. All the children religious. All the children very religious. The sons learning Torah, going to Kollel after they got married. And valedictorians, which means top student in the school, in a religious school. Could you imagine what that rabbi is going to do when he finds out what he said and how deeply he hurt? He could have destroyed these people completely. We need to know somewhere inside of us that there is a concept of reward and punishment, and that's a motivation to want to do the right thing. If it motivates me, it inspires me to do another mitzvah, another good deed, then it's good. If it gets me down or depressed, it's coming from the other side. It's coming not from a good place. Hashem should help that we should be motivated, driven that anytime we see a difficulty, now I'm going to be better. I'm going to be nicer to my wife. I'm going to do everything I can for Hashem to see that if he's trying to send me a message, I got it. In fact, my rabbi told me about a person, he grew up in Russia when communist Russia was first beginning. And he said there was a Jew there that he knew who was very talented, an artist and an actor. And this Jew got involved in theater in Russia at the time. Jewish theater, which when the communists came around, was all about mocking religion, sarcastic, making fun of religion. And he became a star in Russia, and then he got caught doing something. They threw him into prison. They threw him into jail. He told my rabbi years later that when I was in prison, I said to Hashem the following words: Hashem, I know why I'm here. I know what you want. If you get me out of here, I'll do it. Sure enough, he was released from prison. He came out. He became a very devout religious Jew, a star. That's the kind of, again, a positive message, trying to always turn it, a positive motivation to do good, to do more good. Thank you for listening. I hope all of our lives will get better and better.